Hey, hi Ryan.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Excited to have. Wow, I think this is probably our sixth video now at this point, at least.
We're getting up there for sure.
Yeah, and covering our. We're into our last probably 5 or 6 weeks of class for our college's digital storytelling. Even though I'm currently wearing the DS 106, we're CT 101, right?
Yep.
And so we've been working with our students a lot on, the gift the portrait project, right, recently.
Absolutely.
And two things are coming out of that I was hoping we'd talk about. One is we kind of brought in my portfolio class last Friday to play with gift the portrait as well, which is the CT99 class. And it led to this kind of spontaneous discussion about and CT 399, for a quick description, is a class for advanced juniors and early seniors as they're preparing for their final projects and their internship, and they're building a portfolio or slash online presence that they would be confident to present as they leave college. And one of the funny things that came up in my class was, hey, I wish I knew about this stuff back in CT 101,
Yeah.
and that student's name is Quasi, and Quasi is also a great, he works with us in CT 101, and so we're like, wow, let's talk about all the advice you have for CT 101 students, freshman students, as juniors and seniors, and I published a post about that just this morning, and you were there while we were discussing a lot of those ideas. And one of the ones that came up really quickly that you mentioned um, as very important was, and this is more of considering content that excites you. Working with content that excites you. Why don't you talk about that and how, why that's important for students to think about?
Well, for one, it's super important to just have a contrast, I think, of what you like and what you don't like. And um, I found that I take great notice to how I feel when I'm selecting specific content that I want to work with, not just on an aesthetic level where I'll see something that just visually stimulates me or leads me to want to investigate it more, but I notice how I feel about it too, meaning like how my body reacts to that. Like I react, I become more present, I'm upbeat, I feel good about what I'm doing, I'm not contemplating it so much. Like there's a whole overall energy to the whole process that kind of propels me into immediate action. And I think that it works like that when we're excited about something, right? Like we're not distracted, we're not worried about time, we're not thinking about all the other things we have to do. We're just kind of really engaged in just getting to work on that thing. And that could be everything from, finding research, finding images, finding videos, selecting materials and tools, and gathering all the stuff that you want to work with, even if it's, finding links and resources and so forth. And that's been a part of my process for a really long time. But I've noticed that over time, when you start to kind of work from that perspective, it's a good habit to get into because those things you're already excited about tend to expand. And as they expand, you just get more excited about the content, whether it's working with it, remixing it, reusing it, and sharing it. For me, it's propelled really greatly into the classroom. You and I certainly have that just as a rapport with each other that we're really, we have a lot in common. So we get excited about the content to talk about, and then we want to share it with our students with just as much excitement. And that energy just transcends, and it works really well. I mean, I think the Give the Portrait project is perfect for that because portraits are really familiar whether you think about them in the extension of how you can, work with it as a context or a subject, we just know the human face so well. So And from time to time, I have students that want to work with their own face, but it's usually pretty rare that if you're not sure what inspires you, then you certainly know of one person in the world that inspires you. So find an image of that person and work with that person's face because it's going to remind you of all the things that they inspire you with their work, and it might not even be completely, um, you know, um, non-fictional. It could be a completely fictional character. From time to time, I get students that use, anime characters from Sailor Moon or from Akira. Like there are students that find great inspiration in cartoon characters or in fictional characters from movies. And when you ask them what it is that inspires them about that person, they give you a whole list of why that character inspires them or excites them and so forth. So they work with that energy, and it usually turns out to be something really cool. So I found that project works well with a really direct metaphor and connection. When you ask someone what inspires you, and they'll say, I don't know. Like, well, who inspires you? And they'll say, oh, SpongeBob inspires and well, how come? And, oh, because he does this, this, that, and the next thing. And did you see this episode and that episode? And all of a sudden, a whole other dialogue happens, and they realize that you also give them permission to work with that subject, and that all of a sudden becomes really interesting, because it's all potential and possibilities at that point.
Right. I think that last point's kind of a really interesting one because that was kind of the starting point of, most students think of thinking about SpongeBob as procrastination, like, oh, they're not doing important work that they think they should be doing towards some greater goal of some greater project they have in the back of their head or even in the forefront of their mind. And so one of the ideas, which is an oxymoronic idea, was that, well, let's think of this as constructive procrastination, right?
Yeah.
And just that first thing you were describing, that notion of just considering SpongeBob and how SpongeBob is made, or what are the themes that go with SpongeBob, and forming an opinion about SpongeBob as a character or the animation style, that's the beginning of really contemplating, the work. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of that first step, and then, you jumped right ahead into this, these habits of making, light habits, which would be like, oh, take a bit of SpongeBob and, cut them apart, or do an animated GIF of SpongeBob, and that stuff is the beginnings of, and that helps build technique, right? I mean, even if it's not quote unquote original work, mm-hmm. as one might strictly construe it. But it is still, you are still making very deliberate selections of SpongeBob banging his head against the burger joints, counter, and he's endlessly banging his head. Well, you've consciously chosen a storytelling moment, and you've crafted a piece of work out of it. And but I think what I love about Gift the Portrait is it pushes all the way to that. These are really constructed experiments, because that's hard, right? I mean, you have to make a lot of really deliberate decisions with a very specific intention. And I thought it'd be kind of fun. I'm going to bring up the Gift the Portrait blog for a second, which I think is cool, right? So people can see it. There it is. Oh, no, here it is. Got it.
Screen share?
Yeah, I've got it. All right, and present to everyone. All right, there it is. So, now you can see these are all, there's a lot of different approaches to this hand cutting and reworking of this portraiture. Some of it's truly just manual and then, cutting and pasting and then remixing. Some of it is done digitally and it's this, some of it's using a combination of tools, whether it's scanning, whether it's Vine, all sorts of ways of finding a loop in a moment to rework and represent. And there's a lot of decision-making going on there, and there's a lot of experimenting because you don't know what the animation's going to turn out like until you're done, and that's what's so exciting. Like, you make the pieces separately. Like you construct sometimes the portraits, and then you animate them, so you can't really exactly know what it's going to look like, and you have to trust in the process and discover what the final piece is going to be at the end, right?
Absolutely.
So I think it's really great, and so yeah, I mean, I think that's those are all like ways of quote unquote procrastinating, but it's not. I mean, and that's why I found this Flickr image of a post-it that someone just wrote, time for some undeserved but necessary free-form creative procrastination. So it's not constructive procrastination, but it's creative procrastination.
Yep.
And I think the students, if they can, as they told themselves, because this is, a lot of these were their ideas, you know, this is what you can do, and then realize from that are derived real skills that will go into supporting larger projects like research. The one that we didn't talk about, you mentioned though, is the notion of simply like archiving and aggregating interesting content. That's a form of research, right?
Absolutely, for sure.
You know, and tagging it, and so you can go back to it and refine it and things like that. You know, reorganizing, like even reorganizing your music library in iTunes. You know,
Yeah.
it seems silly and like a way of procrastinating, but as you do it by artist or by theme and re-tag, your library, those are building research skills, and those things become useful in the context of doing larger projects.
Absolutely. No question about it. Any time I find that we go back to reorganize anything, it always leads me to another idea of what I can do with that content. And to the point where I get distracted in the task itself of, well, I started organizing this, but now I've got this idea as a result of that, and I've got to really focus to finish the first task at hand, that I don't get distracted in wanting to just make something out of the process itself. So, just going through your archives or, finding repositories that have your place where you do keep your content is definitely worthwhile. No question about it. I mean, I just, when I created the Gift the Portrait project, it was really just as a result of creating a platform for one class's results that were, generated to help inspire them to make maybe some potential corrections. But then I realized, why not extend that to other people that could potentially work with the content or archive the content or, see what happens in the process. And it just continues to grow and change context and integrate more great aspects to it. So what's better than that?
Yeah. So besides this advice, and there's other pieces that I think we're going to have our students that's going to be put into a reflection they can consider doing, is like this advice and what things they'll take to heart, the CT 101 students in the digital storytelling, what they'll take to heart. But as far as you describing the portraiture and recontextualizing that, we have this project idea that we're considering with our students, which is taking those portraits and making new ones or using the existing ones and finding ways to get them visualized out in the wild, if you will. The notion of making, and this is something I think we're both personally interested in, is a form of GIF street art, if you will, or just getting the GIF out of off of the internet, if you will, like the way that you consume it, and out into the spaces. And one of the ones we're thinking about doing is, we have to pick a date, is I'm going to show this picture of this hallway in the atrium of our school that we think would be kind of really cool to use. Let's see that. Oh wait, let me open this preview. It's not a visible application. Okay, now I think it'll be there. There it is. Cool. There we go. So here's this. this hallway. Yep, you see it, Ryan?
Oh yeah, got
Okay.
it.
So this hallway, we're thinking about imagining between these spotlights, projecting the portraiture to create this evening event. And there's another image of a kind of cavernous space. And basically, we have access to all these projectors, and we were thinking about ways we could push this imagery out there into spaces. But also, we were imagining, wouldn't it be cool if the students themselves found ways to get portraits they create, gift portraits, and place them out in the wild and photograph them or videotape them so we could understand and reimagine the context of that work in ways that seem sometimes constrained by a web browser, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the things I thought of, and I was wondering what you thought of this, is immediately there's a little bit of a tech question, right? How do they, they have to show up to that moment with two devices, one to display the GIF,
right,
and another one to record and make an artifact of their contextualizing it. So do you have any ideas of how they might approach that?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind with me is, I'm lucky enough to have, an iPhone and an iPad. So having access to a second device, of course, is one way that you can play around with this idea. But if you don't have access to an additional device, you could always ask a friend to become a collaborator in the
Definitely.
process, which would be great. To expand an idea, to allow a friend to either loan you their device so you can use the device as the one that's playing the animation, or use your own device as the one that plays the animation and have a friend take the photo or record it a bit. But there are some other ways that I've also taken notice to, that a lot of classrooms and a lot of other display monitors in and around campus in particular, sometimes there's ways to talk to your professor and allow for them to bring up a web page for you and full screen it and play it, and think about how you can work with your surroundings and reach out to people that may have access to the technology that you need, and work out some kind of an arrangement with them to get things kind of going. So you will have to kind of step out of just maybe just using your device and getting it to play and holding it up and smiling. That there's another way that you can work with people and
Right.
take action on constructing even even if it's a 10-minute event, where you've got access to additional technology to make that happen. And I think campus is a pretty safe bet to be able to do that, because there's a good amount of computer labs on campus, and there's a good amount of monitors on campus, and a lot of people that monitor those areas and get creative and start talking to people. And
Right.
also start doing a bit of research online. What artists are using, guerrilla techniques or collaborating on projects, and you can type everything into a Google search from public GIF animations or street art GIFs, or even projection mapping. I mean, there's a lot of information out there that I think our students are going to have to kind of do a little bit of the research on their own and come up with some ideas and start kind of testing things out.
Yeah,
Recruiting a team.
that's a really good idea. I mean, the projection mapping stuff is unbelievable. Some of it. I mean, that stuff is so inspiring.
Yeah.
I mean, just for them to see some of that stuff would be just kind of probably wild. But I like that. I like that idea, and we'll put that stuff, some of that together, and let them know we want the direction we're thinking about with them to do with this. So
Yeah.
cool.
So, and it's getting me excited as well, because I've had several ideas for projects like this as well, that every time I start thinking about it, I get distracted with something else. But it's really pushing me now to write out some of my ideas. At least now I'm logging them into a file that I keep remembering a bit more now as we discuss it and our students are engaged in it. It just inspires the overall energy, which I think would be fantastic to have the event that we discussed, and to have all of the technology present, and that event announced might also be the platform where students say, okay, well, if all this stuff's going to be there, then I'm going to make sure that I'm going to attend that evening because I want to also test my idea
Yeah,
as
cool.
well. So we're kind of inviting them to come and do that at the same time, so which would be fantastic.
Yeah, you know what we can do too is I can repurpose that HTML and JavaScript that I hacked together for the animating transit,
Yep, awesome.
and we can pull out a lot of the GIFs and just have them loop. Remember that would work really well. They're on a timer, and then we could, that'd be kind of cool too.
Absolutely. Great,
Yeah.
great idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So I think we've covered most stuff. I think we try to do a pretty good job of keeping these not too long, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's right on, and I hope everyone's finding use value in it. I certainly enjoy it.
Yeah, me too.
Cool, man.
All right, so look forward to seeing you on Monday, and I'm gonna point to this post in the calendar under reflections, as well as start to talk about the public portrait idea.
Awesome.
All right.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it, man. Like I said, I got some good ideas to test out myself.
All right. All right. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.